Welcome everyone to another great video here in Weekly News Cloud. Before we start, I want to take a second to let you know how I appreciate your time spent watching my videos. Thank you very much. I try to make the videos short, but at the same time provide the necessary information to help everyone understand what is happening and what is expected from the geopolitical events taking place around us. It has been 1 year since the planet's oligarchs talked Zelensky into making Ukraine the Colosseum where they were going to dispute who runs the planet for the next 70 years. As we have learned, it's always the children, mothers-to-be, the elderly, and those in bed rest who suffer the most, as they are the most vulnerable population. Most liberal news networks do not seem to acknowledge the 2014 coup that took place in Ukraine. NATO would have respected the Minsk agreement. The world would not be going through the events we are forced to live at this moment. I sincerely believe that NATO understands that the planet's civilization is tired of their selfish wars, and it's the reason they have decided to ban RT and other alternative media that are unwilling to follow their false narrative. I want you to watch this video so that you can understand that it's not just me saying it. There's people with a lot of knowledge, experience in geopolitical and also international relations who agree with what I'm saying.
That there was a peace agreement in 2014, and it was called the Minsk Accords. And so what that was supposed to do was avoid a war between Russia and Ukraine. And what was the war over? So the people, the Russia-speaking separatists in the Donbass, didn't want to go along with the coup of Ukraine. So a bunch of right-wingers overthrew the government with the help of the United States and the CIA in 2014, overthrew the government, and people in the Donbass didn't want to go along with it. The Russian-speaking people in the eastern part of Ukraine didn't want to go along with this coup, and so there was fighting. And so we had the Minsk agreement, and that was supposed to give autonomy to the people in the Donbass, and then they were supposed to be able to have their own local elections, and the Ukraine government was going to stop bombing them. Well, they never abided by it. The Ukraine government never stopped bombing.
Now that you have watched the video, I want to go on with this information because I don't want to make the video too long. I remember when the US went to war against Iraq and Afghanistan. Because alternative news was not available, the oligarchs had no problems broadcasting the bombing taking place, and they weren't shy about showing us drones bombing civilians, taking apart small towns. The US in 1 month collapsed Iraq economy. The same with Afghanistan. In 1 month their economy was totally collapsed. I think we know that these nations don't have anything that could compare or stand to NATO's military equipment. The US, a country who does not recognize the International Criminal Court, is trying to use this judicial body to open a case against Vladimir Putin. Let me say that China, US, and Russia do not recognize the International Criminal Court. The way I understand this publication is that the West is trying to establish an alliance, another alliance, trying to find a way to increase what is known as Russophobia. They accuse Vladimir of deporting children from Ukraine, a war-torn country. I believe anyone with a single neuron in their brain would say thanks for removing these children from an area where missiles are landing every day. If you stop and think about that, what's actually taking place, these children's lives are being saved. The U.S. never cared to do the same for the children in Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, Libya, Iraq. I could go on, right? The U.S. excused the killing of hundreds of thousands of children by saying would grow up to become suicide bombers. You remember that? Because I do. I remember it. I could never forget those words. But tell me your opinion. What do you think about? What are your thoughts? Lately is starting to relate the truth about what is happening in Ukraine and how Ukraine will not win the war. Unfortunately for Europe, their economy has been damaged, and the US has a strong grip on their economic future. They will depend on the US maybe for a decade. I'm not sure. Keep in mind, the war in Ukraine is a proxy war against Russia. Ukraine's military power never stood a chance against the mighty military complex of Russia. When Russia lost one soldier, Ukraine would lose 10, 12. The situation for Ukraine is terrible. Zelensky's Azov Nazis militants are recruiting children, elderly men, even civilians with some disabilities. Where do they recruit, you ask? In coffee shops, restaurants, embassies, where families are seeking help to migrate out of Ukraine. If you are a man, you're not allowed to live with your family. And I'm not making that up. In areas controlled by Ukraine, Western media were not allowed to enter during recruiting periods because of what I just explained. Most people still do not believe Russia is fighting against Nazis. It is hard to show those videos since platforms with the most views censor. They have censorships. Russia has destroyed a good part of the Nazis who kept terrorizing the Russian speakers in areas of Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Luhansk, right? But let's remember that Kyiv is controlled by Nazis, and Russia needs Ukraine to be a neutral nation. Since Russia has destroyed the military forces that received training from 2014 to 2023 or 2022, all new recruits are lacking training, experience, right? They're lacking training and experience, and others do not want to be in the front lines. Like I just said, they are recruited, forcefully recruited, and said, "Here is a rifle. Learn to use it because you're going to the front lines." Some of them receive 3 weeks of training, which is obviously inadequate. Azov soldiers with experience and proper training ended up wounded or have lost a limb. Now imagine a child who is in the front lines forcefully. Let's remember the Vietnam War, when the US would send 17-year-olds to the front lines. I think we have all seen those documentaries. Here is an interesting note to share. When the war began, Russia entered with 191,000 soldiers, and Ukraine had 450,000 well-trained professional soldiers and well-equipped, plus 200 well-trained reserves, 650,000 soldiers. People with military knowledge indicate that they had better training than most NATO forces. Same people speak how the Ukraine forces have been rebuilt 3 times. Experts let us know how armies take time to rebuild. I've all heard of the Leopard tanks. They're either recently been delivered or will be delivered. Because of the lack of training, lack of knowledge of these tanks, who will end up driving those tanks? A country that sends them. Will have to send soldiers. So Poland, some Polish militant will have to. The Germans, some German militant. Here are some quick numbers on Bakhmut, the graveyard of Ukraine army. The losses are frightening, my friends. For Ukrainians, we have heard about Russians receiving some losses, but we are comparing 30,000 wounded Russians and 60 or 70,000 Ukrainians. And these numbers include some NATO soldiers. Because like I said, some of those equipment, Ukrainian armies or the new soldiers, these new recruits, don't know how to use it. They have never held a weapon. But if you need to use like a missile rocket, who will have to use it? A NATO soldier. How simple it is. 300,000 or 400,000 wounded. Most of the wounded will never return to active duty. It's really terrible. This war should end. Every time Russia says stop peace talks, let's come to a peace agreement, NATO says no, to the last Ukrainians don't want this war to continue. It is said that these numbers are a reminder of World War I. Ukrainian citizens, like I said, don't want this war to continue. NATO's wars stocks are exhausted. And this is not something that I'm making up. Colonels are talking about this. So, and Europe doesn't have any war stocks, because for the longest times, maybe over 30 years, they have depended on the US military industry, while Russia is in their peak of its power right now, with unending quantities of ammunition and equipment. What NATO is trying to do, work down the pipeline, says that NATO is trying to find a way to disengage without looking ridiculous for the third time, right? Vietnam, Afghanistan, and now Ukraine. They're trying to save face. Military experts say it will be tough, because the Ukrainians will find out they were lied to. The Europeans also. And then the US citizens, they will find out once again that their media lied to them. Again, the Chinese peace agreement is the humane thing to do. NATO and the US saying, no, we're not going to allow you to do our job. It's doing what the US should be doing, or what NATO should be doing, because they are the peacekeepers, right? They are the planet's police. But their interest is somewhere else. Things will only get worse before it gets better. Prosperity takes time to rebuild. My friends, tell me what you think about this video. We have reached the end of this video. Leave me your comments, leave me your opinions. Really appreciate if you give a like to this video. Watch my other videos too. As always, don't forget to help someone in your community, as you may be the only one who does, my friends. Ciao for now.